So I'm Carly,
And I'm Louise.
and we are talking about Braithwaite's reintegrative shaming concept. So the questions we were given and what we're talking about today is what is Braithwaite's reintegrative shaming concept and how does this concept work in practice?
Reintegrative shaming was first founded in Braithwaite's book Crime, Shame, and Recognition Theory in 1989. The theory basically states how society should shame the action of the crime and not the criminal themselves. They should shame what was done, but it still accept the person back to the society. This is opposing to disintegrative shaming or stigmatization, where they would both shame the action and shame the individual, not welcoming them into the society anymore.
How it can be used. There are multiple ways to use this theory. A primary way this theory goes into function is when you have the offenders, victims, and others affected together to discuss. Could be in a form of a group discussion or recovering method so others learn and get better. An example we have is a school fight where both the kids involved and their parents go to the principal's office to discuss their actions. This encourages people to reintegrate into society rather than stigmatizing them as bad people, which kind of goes along with what we were talking about before.
Now, reintegrative shaming is part of a bigger thing known as restorative justice, and that consists of four different parts: restore, repair, reconcile, and reintegrate. You want to restore the damages of the people who were affected in the crime you made. You want to repair whatever was done, whatever harm. You want to reconcile with the victim, make amends, and become, friends with them and chill again. And you want to reintegrate the offenders back into the society so they feel like they never actually left that community and can understand from their wrongdoings and grow.
So, other ways reinformative shame can be effective. So, another topic we wanted to discuss is what is the moral disengagement theory? And it's a hear me out, but you get to hear all perspectives. Victims speak on how crime affected them, and offenders explain why they did it, and community members offer their input on how it affected the community. It is in most cases makes the offender feel shame and guilt, hearing how their actions hurt others, and they may repent. Braithwaite believes it is effective in small communities, but it falls short in urban areas or when it comes to primary offenses. Another example of this would be someone getting caught stealing at a store and being forced to return the items and explain to the store owners why his actions were wrong. That would be shameful.
Braithwaite stated that restorative justice is about healing rather than hurting, moral learning, community participation, and community caring. Respectful dialogue, forgiveness, responsibility, apologies, and making amends. So he really believed that people could change and improve if they know what the area to improve is. He doesn't think that they are all just bad people and they'll keep committing the crime. He understands that people make mistakes, and if you point out them into the right direction, they will learn from this. He also states that it mostly works well in granting justice, closure, restoration of dignity, transcendence of shame, and healing for the victim. So not only does the criminal, whoever committed the crime, learn and become a better person, but the victim also gets to heal, learn to forgive, and also just feel more connected even after wrongdoing was done to them.
Reintegrative shaming falls under labeling theory, but not quite. While reintegrative shaming, as stated previously, shames the act, not the person encouraging them to learn, feel remorse, and reintegrate them into society. Labeling theory offers the idea that society's labeling individuals negatively will lead them to internalize those labels and commit more crimes or act as they are labeled since they are already viewed that way.
More real world examples. So at Penn State Du Bois, and on November 20th in 2018, students were assigned to wear signs describing a crime it's not that they committed, this was more of an example they just wanted to do for extra credit, but just of a crime in general to stimulate or simulate a punishment. They kind of like wore outfits, had like a poster of a crime they quote unquote committed, and were just walking down the street. So people would kind of see this and be like, oh, so if I were to commit this crime, this is how they'd probably treat me. That's not really, the crime's not worth it. They're not hating on the individual themselves, they're not shaming on them, more so the act, because it's like, oh, that act doesn't really seem good with the crime itself. Like, that's not a good way of responding to it. You know, they're focusing on the punishment, but not the individual who committed it.
Indigenous groups, such like the Pushtun ethnic in Afghanistan, have a reintegrative ceremony and has the offender contribute, provide food supplies for a community feast hosted by the victim. In the event, members discuss the wrongdoing and disapproval on the matter, but still accept the offender. This is kind of reintegrating them into society and not labeling them as a bad person, as we discussed was part of reintegrative shaming, and pretty much accepting them into society.
So there's not really much to reintegrative shaming other than just, shaming the act instead of the individual. I think that's really what it focuses on. So many real world examples can be like any act that involves calling out the crime. I don't know why it says calling out the offender because it's not really that. You got to acknowledge the crime, talk to the victim, get feedback from community so they kind of understand, your perspective and why you regret it, explain the reasoning to understand what was wrong, and learn they are still accepted by the community. Like they aren't just viewed as criminals and no longer want anything to do with them. They're still understanding, accepting, and welcoming them back to the society. Which is where reintegrative shaming really, takes place. It doesn't shame one for committing a crime stated previously. It just shames the crime itself. So there's not much to it. It's pretty simple. And there's examples like literally anywhere. But that's just the main basics of how to acknowledge that reintegrative shaming is happening.
And that is it. Thank you so much for listening, and we hope you have a great day.
Thank you.